Hi, happy Friday. I'm Jennifer Wilson, and I'm with my good friend Amy Vetter, and we're here for Leadership Lunch Chat. We want to talk about issues facing the profession or facing us in our practices and in our lives, and what you might be facing. So we're interested in hearing from you as we go with comments and social if you're seeing this live. Today, Amy and I thought we would talk about and process this transition to artificial intelligence, AI, and what it's going to do to staff development models, learning models. How are we going to bring people along when a lot of the entry level work will be done by the systems, things that we traditionally helped people come in and learn so they could build a foundation and then go on to more advanced jobs. We're going to have to recognize that at some point in the future, and it's not very far away, a lot of that teeth cutting work is going to disappear. The system will do it. And how will we get people up? And I'm going to start us in one spot that I've just been talking to a lot of different people about, and then we'll see where Amy wants to take it from there. But one thing that I want to set sort of like some observations, and one is in public accounting, and really to some degree in bookkeeping, accounting organizations, and in technology companies to some extent, we have sort of an inefficient learning model today. It isn't like the learning model is awesome, and we bring people along really fast, and it's real strategic, and and it really develops kind of all parts of the person's brain and skills, the technical, the relational, the other soft skills too. We have kind of an inefficient kludgy bolt-on kind of model, and we try to add some skills way later in somebody's career when they really should have gotten them earlier. For instance, relationship development skills or communication skills, as an example, or business development skills. Those things should be developed early and often, but we don't do that. So we have an inefficient model. Some people want to argue that. I'm just going to say 14 to 17 years to become a partner is about the same time it takes to train a neurosurgeon. And I don't think we're doing neurosurgery. So there's something strangely inefficient along the way. The second thing is that, I was around, I was a kid and I wasn't yet in my 20s. I was still in my teens when the microcomputer came out, and microcomputer accounting, ERP, in its very infancy. And the infancy, the pre-products to Excel and using spreadsheets to do calculations, that all sort of was being invented. And firms were afraid, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, and we're not going to be as smart as we used to be. That was one of the concerns. And I just want to say that I believe that we might have to do a little bit of parallel work with new people to start, but it's unlikely we'll continue parallel work. Some people are thinking like, well, we'll bring them in and we'll make them do it for, do it the old way, whatever that old way is, pre-AI automation. We'll do it the old way, we'll teach them the old way, and then they can go use it the new way and they'll have the foundation. My personal opinion of that is, I saw that already way back when the microcomputer was invented. We weren't going to let people use Excel or Lotus 123 or VisiCalc or whatever it was. We weren't going to let them use that to add columns of numbers because we thought they needed to do it manually. And, we didn't make them keep doing it manually for very long. We realized right away that's silly. So I want us to be careful as we're thinking about learning and developing people in the new paradigm. Be careful not to think, we'll just have them do it the old way, but for not very long, as part of their development process. I think we're going to have to trust the systems and figure out new ways to develop the skills. And I think there's all kinds of cool learning platforms that offer gamification and all sorts of interesting ways of developing the core technical skills that we have developed in the past by just having somebody sit and do the same prep processes or audit processes or accounting processes for 3 years, and then they're finally ready to move up. I think we're going to have to figure out how to do it entirely differently to get those basics in quick. And then move on to more advanced things that we should have been teaching all along. What do you think, Amy?
So I know when I started out in the beginning of my career and was an assistant accountant. That was my title. I don't know how you are an assistant accountant, but you really can't get a lower title. But I was in audit, and to me, audit kind of is the same thing. So you go about learning an audit by going through checklists, but not ever doing the work. And you are asking questions off of those checklists. You start learning what to look for. You start analyzing data. And that's coming fresh out of school. But what I do remember is that when I originally started my business, when I think I was 26 or 27, and decided to do an outsourced bookkeeping controllership practice, there wasn't a CAS at that point. My first client, I decided to take myself because my initial intention was to hire bookkeepers and I was going to work with the business owners. So I decided to do the bookkeeping myself with the first client. And I had realized that I had audited bank recs, but never done a bank rec. And when I started doing the bank recs and finding the errors, and that was when QuickBooks was around. And even at that time, QuickBooks was a huge step in the direction away from manual T ledgers and, the double entry accounting, the manual double entry accounting that was happening behind the scenes of QuickBooks. And so even when I became a trainer in QuickBooks, there would be accountants of the past, like, I don't trust this, and so forth. So one of the ways that I learned as someone doing the transactions and really trying to figure it out was kind of getting in the detail and figuring out, like, why is there an error? It's not that different with AI, right? Because what these AI agents are going to surface errors, like, depending on the technology that you choose. And these are things that you have to ask and be knowledgeable about. It's very important to understand, well, if an error shows up in the software, what do I do to get behind it? And one of the things that when I started out in QuickBooks and there wasn't the paper ledgers anymore and sub ledgers, there were what do you call them? Quick key. What do you call it on your desktop when you use your keys to shortcut keys? But anyway, so you would use a shortcut key on a picture of a check, and you would be able to see the journal entry behind the check so that you understood where it was going. And then you could come back to what the image was in the software. I think this is a big piece of the learning process going forward, and where people that are leaders, managers, supervisors are going to have to structure training when you're talking about learning and development, where you're making space to show your entry level people what happened with that transaction. How would you know it was an error? Where do you go seek to find that there's an error in the system? And what capability does the software have to show you? So one of the things, I was just at the Bill Partner Council that they were showing was the audit log, so that an AI agent that is doing the work in the system, if you're trying to understand what was the accounting behind the scenes, what happened, you can go to that audit log and be able to verify the transaction from a human perspective. So it is really important that we start rethinking what the roles are in a practice. And this could be if you're in corporate or you're in public accounting, right? That you've got to start rethinking, what are the job descriptions you're going to need? What are the critical thinking skills and problem solving skills that someone's going to need to have? to be in these roles as an entry level? What is the education that I would need to know how to go seek for problems and what those mean and what the actual accounting is behind the scenes in the software? The AI agents that are going to be working within the software almost like new staff people, right? Because they're going to be doing a lot of that work. But then we've got to reimagine what those roles are going to be to verify, make sure that the data is right, and then be able to analyze the data so that we can have better conversations with our clients. You're not going to necessarily have that conversation at entry level, but you can at least shadow the person that's having that conversation so that you know where to find those errors in the future. And so rethinking those job roles and how you're going to supervise, train, and review is going to be really important as you start thinking about what are these new features, how do they integrate, and what is my role now?
So two big things come up for me while you're saying those things. And one is, like, when we do a systems implementation or an upgrade or a shift or a bolt-on enhancement or whatever, implement any new tool, traditionally, I think we think, well, okay, I've got to teach the features and benefits and the how-tos. And we don't necessarily think, wait, before we do that, we need to redefine roles. It's not very common that we think, wait, back up. How is every person in the process's role going to shift? What things did they do that they're not going to do anymore? So what's going away? What's new that they're going to have to do that we didn't do before, like check those logs using your example. And I love that, that you're clarifying that with what you said, because I do think we are terrible about clarity of expectation of role and bullets of duties and responsibilities and swim lanes between you and me. So we're really clear about which one of us is doing which piece. We don't document that usually. We're pretty loose, and there's a lot of assumptiveness. And I don't think we can be very assumptive as it relates to whole task areas going away, that our people will find the new task areas organically. I think we do have to prescribe and be specific, and it requires what I'm going to call a little bit of organizational design or strategy, roles design, before you start implementing and training people on how to. So that's one thing that I just really heard clearly in what you said. The other thing is that I just keep thinking about, and I have, it's not baked yet, it's batter, but it's the idea of specialization. So, we have traditionally tried to say, everybody come into these roles and you have to be technical, you have to be relational, you have to be analytical, you have to be able to communicate, you have to, like all the, have an attention to detail, you have to be well organized, blah, blah, blah. We have all this stuff that's sort of expected or implied. And then of course we don't use half of that in the first few years. Then we're surprised if like year 4, we can't see it in the person. We forgot that, we should have screened for it. But I just keep thinking, as AI becomes, infinitely more embedded in all of our systems, not just our financial accounting or tax or audit systems, but all our productivity tools and just the way we communicate with one another, all of it. I think we're going to be specializing more. I think we're going to focus more on aptitude and sort of innate preference and sort of, the way your brain works. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna start looking at that more carefully and be less one size fits all with these roles. And one big aha that I had in my career in the last decade about the differences, like I work with a lot of different consultants to the profession, and we've done lots of different projects. I work with you, Amy, and our brains work differently. And one of the things that I found out was that not everybody takes benchmark data and reads it for lunch, cares about it, wants to do calculations on it, wants to try to think about economic implications to the model and things. But also, not everybody can take the data and identify trends, issues, or maybe they can look at data trends, but they can't infer the reasons. They can't marry what they know about what's happening with what they're seeing in the data. Not everybody has a brain that does that. And so I think we have to start paying attention to how do our people's brains work. Where are their gifts and talents that are unique? And we've been saying this a long time, you and I, we should be really focusing on people that have better potential to be advisory, better relational skills, could go off road, less needing a checklist. I just think it's really going to be important for us to start skills and aptitude and genetic preference identification and categorization, and getting people more specialized going forward, so that we put people in the right place and don't try to make them span all that stuff in their new role.
Yeah, it forces you as an employer to rethink the job roles in the firm, in your department, if you're in a business, and what that means. Because, if someone is really good at technology and is an accountant, then they can understand how accounts map over, when there's a problem, there's errors in the data, how to troubleshoot it, be able to stay up, the amount of rapid innovation that is happening right now because of these tools being available. Having someone on your team with an accounting background but loves technology needs to stay up to date with all of the tools that you're using all of the time, because there's just hundreds of new features coming out. And so that's like the secondary probably concern or observation, is that maybe you're not manual, but maybe you haven't kept up with the application's releases and enhancements, and making sure that there's time for learning to do that as well. And that someone is responsible for that on your team to teach everybody else, and to be rethinking what the business process implications are and how to keep making things more and more efficient. What I see a lot is, well, either still in firms, everyone's doing things a different way depending on the partner that they work for, and some are not moving to technology still, which is going to be a really hard retention strategy. If you want to keep people, especially in this next generation that has grown up with all of these applications. And then, the second part is that we don't just go run to the shiny new objects. We learn what's in the applications that we're utilizing already, and then compare to the shiny new objects and make sure that either it's filling a gap or that it's truly better than what you have. Because if you haven't been keeping up with the application, you might go jump and cause chaos in your system because you didn't actually do the right assessment. So these job roles are so important, and that's, we don't have time to get into it, but that's going to change everything. Time and billing, the way you price, all of it. Because are you going to bill for the time an AI agent is taking to do the work? Like, you've got to figure out, this really forces packaging and pricing to move in a different area once we figure out what are the roles of technology, offshoring, your staff, your team, you, and then how does this figure into how you go to market?
Gosh, what a can of worms you just opened. And I love it, because that's our next topic, right? So we're gonna have to talk about time, and the fact that we can't have less revenue because of AI. So what are we going to do to change everything about the way we communicate value, and price and package and KPIs, measures of success, when AI strips time? I love that, Amy, and let's memorialize it here so we can remember next time we get together that that's something important to talk about. I'm not that worried that AI is going to take tons of jobs. It will change jobs. There's no doubt about it. And it might change the kind of people we're trying to attract to the jobs. So over time, we could have this evolutionary shift that we are looking for people that are maybe a little bit less, I don't want to say less technical, but maybe less organizing, sorting, entering people, and more people that are evaluating and assessing and opining on the stuff, and that will require different skills. But just like the invention of the microcomputer, everybody was totally wigged that tax software and ERP and those things, they were going to take all the accounting jobs. They were all gone. And that didn't happen. It just made our jobs a little easier, but also more complex, and gave us a whole bunch of different advisory jobs from what they used to do back when there was a paper and 10 key and all that. And that's what's going to happen now. We're just going to have different jobs and attract different folks. I don't think we should sit around worrying about viability, and instead we should be innovating. And I love this idea of starting with the existing apps, Amy, and I think that could be a whole session too, because we're not keeping up with what the current software we have in the business is doing from the AI perspective and how it's changed the job. And we haven't sort of created role shifts based on that, or expectations that everybody's using it. So it's not well known in the business. So not only some people who sort of think it's a secret trapdoor or something that they get to go through, they're using it, but other people are missing out on it altogether. And not throwing out your app because you think some shiny penny has it. I love that. That thing, I hear that's AI enabled, but I'm not checking to see if the one I have is, or how so. I think that was really a wise one, so I want to underscore it. So I really, really appreciate this processing that we do together, Amy, and for all of our folks that tuned in. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the learning model, and also what you're already doing to adapt the learning model and roles in your organization. And we promise we will talk about the impact of time, and the impact to time of AI and money, time and money, in a future leadership lunch chat. So please join us. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.